Hello, and welcome back to the Pop Culture Graveyard Podcast. I am Hollis. With me, as always, is Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Hollis.
And we are very excited because we are bringing you a special July 4th episode on Jaws.
Jaws,
the 1975 blockbuster that started the summer blockbuster as a thing. Dave, we can't do better for a July 4th movie than Jaws.
Many would say you can't do better for a movie.
You just did.
Mm-hmm.
I stand by that. It is a perfect movie. It truly is. We've covered a few perfect movies on the podcast, but this one has a special place in my heart because it gave me nightmares for about 10 years and is the reason to this day that I can't go in a natural body of water.
We know you, Hollis. We know why you don't go. We know you don't go in the water.
That's some bad hat, Dave. For those of you at home on the podcast, Dave is wearing a fishing hat that is a Henry Blake from MASH hat, sans hooks. And I am wearing a Minutemen shirt because it has an anchor on it. It was the best I could do on theme. This movie, when I was a kid, I saw it with my family in the theater. And I saw it between my mother's fingers. I was far too young to see this movie, and I had nightmares. I would wake up screaming, and it started a whole progression of me not sleeping well to this day.
Wow.
And I love this movie. I've grown to love it. Like on home video, I loved it. But for years, it was just in the years before home video was a thing, my memories of this movie would just haunt me at night.
Yeah, there was a friend of mine who's not with us anymore, Tom. It was his favorite movie. It also terrified him and kept him terrified throughout life. Yeah. If you imitated a couple of notes from Jaws, he would get out of the water.
Yeah.
And he would be pissed at you. He'd be like, "Oh, why did you do that?
Right.
Now I have to get out of the water." It damaged you. It damaged the shark. It helped demonize the shark.
Yeah, and sharks didn't have a great reputation before then even.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, though, I think a huge amount of weight can be put on Jaws for damaging the reputation of the shark. If you drew a fin on the water, like just with pen, if you just drew like water and then drew that little fin and showed it to someone, more people would have said, "I don't know what that is." And after Jaws, people are like, "Shark."
Yeah. Almost like Mayor Vaughn said, you show them that picture and they'd be like, "Huh? What?" But after Jaws, it's like you got a full-blown panic. Me and your friend Tom in natural bodies of water, it kind of even makes sense. I mean, stranger things have happened than, a shark attack in water. But I even can't go in a pool if I can't see the bottom. Like if it's a dark liner, it freaks me out.
I see it.
I can't go in at night either,
I thought about this while I was watching the movie and after, and it is such a perfect thing to terrify you. You take an ocean, and it also explains many of the shots in the movie, because sometimes you're like, it's just the top of the water. That's not, what exposition is that? And I'll tell you what the exposition is. When you look at a body of water, a lake or an ocean, it's this thin layer that separates your world and that world. And you can't see beyond that layer. And below that layer is all manner of creature and all manner of danger. And then you get in. 90% of you is in their world, the world of the shark. And all your sensory equipment, most of it, your eyes, your ears, is above the water. So I'm probably freaking you out right now just describing it that way. Yeah. But think about like that. All your sensory equipment is in the safe world.
Right.
And all your meat is in the shark world. It's a great idea to make a movie about that.
I'll go you one further. You touched on it there. That is not our world, Dave, and we don't belong in it. And through technology, through oxygen tanks and pressurized subs,
and snorkels and fins,
all of that
all
stuff,
of it,
we have not only trespassed where we don't belong, but we've stolen a lot of the mystery of the deep. And don't get me wrong, I love watching shows that would go, deeper than anyone's gone before. And you see all these
Mhm.
ridiculous looking fish that are glowing and like,
Yeah,
kind
or
of lamp
the
fish with
lantern.
the lantern.
We both do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Uh,
Angler. Yeah.
yeah, but we don't belong there. And I'm just as happy if we had never trespassed as deep as we did. And we were like, yeah, maybe there is a monster in there. Maybe there are, maybe those pictures from sailors way back when come from somewhere. There be beasts in this,
Darby
part of the map.
Dragons. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we belong there. So this movie, in a larger sense, is all about how we just designate areas as like, this is a holiday area. And the shark is
Mhm.
like, no, 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 I've been fishing here for years.
Do you know how
Maybe
many years? Want to know how
years.
many years sharks have been fishing off of Amity? When sharks were first swimming off the coast of Amity, there was no such thing as a tree.
Right.
Sharks are 450 million years old. They're
Yeah.
older than trees. They're pre-Devonian. They are one of the longest existing things there is. That's how you get that whole unstoppable eating machine thing. It's one of the best pieces of proof of evolution ever.
Yeah, I mean, when
Yeah.
the sharks see all the kind of beachgoers on Amity, they must be like, ugh, fucking transplants. They're ruining this place. Goddamn land bridge.
Tourists.
So everyone knows this movie was the first big monster hit for Steven Spielberg as a director. It put him on the map. It created a new style of movie making. Steven Spielberg and later his friend George Lucas would change movies forever, coinciding with all of the old-timey film owners selling off their film companies to the Coca-Cola company and, all of these businessmen. The blockbuster became something every movie studio aspired to make every single time out. And I think, obviously, in retrospect, to the detriment of
Mm.
a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
great movies that simply aren't made anymore. And that's a lot to put at the feet of Steven Spielberg. He was just trying to make a good film, and he did. But
Mhm.
it's a complicated legacy. And I mean, it inspired a million imitators. Orca, all the
Mhm.
Jaws sequels, Deep Water and Megalodon, and all of these movies, some good, some not so good, or a lot of them not so good,
Mostly not so good, yeah.
mostly not so good. But like Spielberg is pretty much blameless, but a lot of people place blame on Spielberg for quote unquote destroying movies. How do you feel about that kind of accusation?
I don't like to level an accusation like that. It's one thing to make an atomic bomb and then say, "Oh, but I made it for all the right reasons." Yeah, but it was an atomic bomb. This is a good story told on film. You can make it for all the right reasons and not have any underlying guilt to worry about. I think he's
Yeah,
100% in the clear.
I do too. And also, the movie Jaws, which is an excellent movie, didn't ruin films. The success of Jaws and the marketing of Jaws and the legacy of Jaws is what destroyed films, if you're leveling accusations. And that's all on the guys making decisions behind closed corridors. That's
Also,
all
for
execs.
everything it broke, it fixed a lot. Before Jaws, we were getting giant ants that were okay, and we were getting giant crabs that were okay, and we were getting the blob from outer space that was okay, but it was all
Yeah.
garbage. He made a monster movie where the monster was real and the people were well fleshed out and were portrayed by fantastic actors. He saved us from more giant ants and stuff like that.
And he pulled off the impossible. He took basically a most of the time broken mechanical shark. They had maybe two of them. They had one on a gimbal and they had another one
Mm,
that was just one side. And then he took a bunch of barrels, which was genius. And
which we've discussed.
which we've discussed
We talked
previously
about it in Aliens.
as
Yeah,
a
Alien.
genius device. And he hid the creature long enough that during its few appearances, it fucking works against
Hmm.
all odds. It's crazy. And I'll do you one better. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Chief Brody and Quint and to a lesser degree, Matt Hooper. I love their characters and what they're doing, what they're after. At the same time, I'm on the side of the shark. When I
Yeah.
see the wrongly accused tiger shark hung up, and it barely has any teeth, and they shot arrows in it and they tried to blow it up and they shot it with rifles and they're there. I'm like, it's so disgusting. And likewise, the way they hunt down in deeper water, hunt down Jaws on his own, Bruce, the shark on his own turf. I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I don't like hunting.
Yeah. I mean, they chase him down and torture him.
Yeah.
Nearly to death, and then eventually to death. You know, it's the movie is so goddamn deep, and I don't know if all the deepness comes like you can draw a lot into it, even though it wasn't there to begin with, or maybe Spielberg is actually as much of a genius as I'm about to imply. The problem is solved instantaneously with zero effort. There's a shark in the water. Don't go in the water. That's it. It's over. It's done.
Yeah.
So, but then comes the genius, like, you know, the zombies in the mall, which
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead, the filmmaker talked about consumerism and the zombies coming back to the mall and stuff.
Yeah.
The thing that keeps the human beings unsafe from the shark is greed and stupidity. The town puts people back in the water where the monster is because of greed. It's very well stated.
Yeah, summer dollars.
Yeah. So is Jaws about the dangers of capitalism? Like there's a lot to this movie.
It's one of the reasons, Dave, that the film has not aged badly at all. We're even more into money and capitalism. This is late stage capitalism we're dealing with. I was watching a clip of Jerry Seinfeld the other day, and this guy has more money than God, but his point was apt. And it was just, when did everything become about money? Like, it used to be that, like, oh, what do you do? Oh, that's such a cool job. You must love that. It's so cool. I can't believe you do that. That's so cool. Everyone used to aspire to cool. And now it's like, oh, what do you make doing that? What do you? Oh, that's good. That's a good job. You make that. We talked about it a little bit in American fiction, where you're not a successful author unless you were highly paid, or unless you have a 6-figure book deal, or you know, 7-figure book deal. So we're through the looking glass now, and it's really ugly the way that everything is decided by money. You know, if tomorrow, you know, an apartment you were living in gets renovated, they're going to replace everything based on what's cheapest. You know,
I was a landlord for 2 years, and I was a terrible landlord because I told my tenants, like, the refrigerator stopped working. And I was like, oh, go on the Home Depot website and tell me which refrigerator you want. And he came back with one of the refrigerators, and I was like, that you don't want that one. That one's cheap. That's garbage. And I said, get a better one than that. And he was like, wow, you are not a normal landlord. But I knew I would only be doing it for like a year or two. Then he got a stove, and I got him a really nice stove.
I can see why you only did it for a short time. You're not cut out for it at all.
Well, the thing is I was like,
eventually
I'm gonna sell this New York City apartment, and I'm probably gonna make a couple $100,000. I'm sorry, but literally, if I make a couple of $10,000 less, I don't care. That young man smiling and saying, "Oh, thank you," is worth it.
Yeah.
Like one of very few exceptions to the rule.
Well, obviously, the film is all about this shark that stakes a claim on this, you know,
territoriality.
Just a theory that I happen to agree with.
Nice.
And so he starts eating these bathers, and every time I see this,
No, I said thank you.
Oh, okay.
It's such a nice way to refer. So the shark begins eating these bathers. That's what he does.
And every time I watch this film, I love the mayor, Larry Vaughn, more and more and more. He brings comedy, as far as I'm concerned. He becomes more and more comic of a character every time I see him. You know, a summer girl goes summer swimming. We need summer dollars. We need, like, he's so one note. He's such a one issue voter. And he's there with his like sport coat with little anchors on it.
Anchors, yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah.
He rocks it twice, I believe.
He's a little Herb Tarlicky in his
Yeah.
attire.
It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. And he's such a wonderful actor. Murray Hamilton. I first loved him in The Graduate. He's Mr. Robinson, Mrs. Robinson's husband. He has such a great voice. And he's so oily in this. You know, he's the right kind of sniveling bureaucrat, you know, who just kind of like the backroom deals. He had the ME, the medical examiner, change it from a shark attack to a boating accident. And now he's trying to massage that into Brody's mind. I just love how it portrays a certain type of bureaucrat who has forgotten long ago that he represents human beings.
Yeah. It speaks to the perfectness of Amity as a place. Amity is a certain size. It has tourists, but it's not Montauk. It's not the Hamptons.
No.
That mayor is slick as hell and does things even more cold-blooded.
Yeah.
Our mayor is small, and he thinks he's got a handle on it, and he's greasy, and he's more worried about dollars than people, but he's not as hard-bitten as Montauk. Now, and small Amity smaller, like bigger doesn't work because these guys are way too shrewd.
And they have more resources to deal with it.
Yeah. You bring in the entire Oceanographic Society, and you bring in literally the National
Coast Guard.
Or the Coast Guard, right. And he's smaller. Like, let's say you then do it smaller. You do it in like a fishing village where there are no tourists. Now you got Friday the 13th, and the only victims are this 7 or 8 people that have to go in the water for their business. So Amity's perfect. Yeah. And that makes the mayor, that makes Larry, is it Larry? Yeah.
Yeah, Larry
That makes
Vaughn.
Larry perfect, Larry Vaughn.
Yeah. I always think it's a little bit like Martha's Vineyard, where they shot a lot of things. It's supposed to be that kind of like small enclave.
It's a Goldilocks thing. It's just right. And that makes him as the mayor just right.
Yeah.
And his arc from relax, we're not closing the beaches, to signing the piece of paper because his kids were on that beach too. You get a nice ASMR signature when he signs the paper off camera.
You do.
You get a scratchity scratch, scratchity scratch, scratch.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that scene, what little kid loves coffee ice cream? What the
I
fuck?
thought the kid was asking for a coffee.
For a coffee, coffee black, Mom.
You want ice cream? You know what? Just bring me a coffee.
Yeah.
And Irish it up.
Yeah, please. After a shit I've seen.
Yes, for coffee. That's so funny.
Because it's a small pond, almost literally, there is a pond, you have less power if you're the chief of police. There's no other people on the island. Dreyfuss's character, Hooper, says to him at one point, you know, when I leave tomorrow, you're going to be the only sane man on the island. And it's true. And that's what makes this such a good movie, is that he's got nobody. It's high noon. And I guess that makes Richard Dreyfuss Grace Kelly. It's one man alone facing down a villain. And it's like the clock keeps ticking. And he's got nobody to help him. Everybody else is scared.
They're tight-knit, and it's pointed out. Brody's wife says, when do I become an islander? You never become an islander. You're born here or you're not. That nail is driven home. Even in the opening, when the guy, the girl who gets, they think, drowned, and he's talking to the kid who passed out the night before with her. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm an islander. My folks are from Greenwich. I go to Trinity. Like, we get his life story, but it's all about being you an islander? No, New York City. There's layers to his character because he came from New York because the crime rate, muggings and rapes and murders. And he's like, but in Amity, one man can make a difference, Brody says at one point. And guess what? You can't because of the bureaucracy and because you are just one man. Until Hooper shows up. That buildup does double duty. It like makes him who he is. It does what you just described. It also does a good job of explaining why he gets out on that boat, because the Kittner boy shook him. It's his fault. It's his fault. He let the mayor and the ME He let those guys
Let me throw
talk him
something
into.
at you. Let me
Yeah,
throw something at you. Why does the Kintner boy affect him so? Was there one murder in New York that he felt
maybe.
he could have
Maybe.
stopped? Was there something like that's how rich a character Brody is? The way we're introduced to him, and when it slowly starts to unfold, Martin doesn't even go in the water. There's a technical name for it, isn't it? And he goes drowning. Like, did he lose a little
Great
brother?
line, though.
Yeah, like what is his? He's haunted by something, and it makes it a very rich character. So,
Yeah.
so the shark thing could be loaded. He could have been triggered by the Kintner boy, like you're saying.
This I have to say something and this is inside baseball PCG. If you listen to the show, I'm always talking about how I used to watch movies and I would just be like, yeah, things explode, yeah, car chase, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also talk a lot about how it's ruined watching movies for me because I'm watching them so closely now. And I'm noticing actors and I'm noticing things, props and things. I realized something watching Jaws. Watching movies too casually can make you not realize how absolutely fantastic they are, can really make you lose out. It turns out I watched Jaws a dozen times and I barely saw it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Jaws this watching, no exaggeration, 10 times as much
Yeah.
because of how I watched it closely.
Oh, that's great.
I'd never appreciated how beautiful Amity is and how beautiful it's portrayed. I had never appreciated so many the character development. I never noticed that Hooper is rich. I never noticed that Quint is tortured. He's just a vengeance machine.
Hmm.
He's Ahab. He is,
Very Ahab.
yeah. And I never noticed so many things. And thank you. What a fantastic
Uh,
movie that I'd been missing out on, even though I'd seen it a dozen times.
oh, that's great.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
that's awesome, Dave. Speaking of Quint, we're not going to cover stuff that's been covered ad nauseum. The whole
Mm,
rewriting of the Indianapolis speech, the whole drunk aspect of it, a lot of those things. But just in the abstract, let's talk about Quint, who survived hundreds of shark attacks during the sinking of the Indianapolis and then floating in the water for days. And he lost hundreds of his shipmates. There's an aspect to Quint when we see Quint in his little kind of shack that he occupies, only two things go in his pot: Campbell's soup or
Shark jaws.
jaws. And he boils them to get all the cartilage off
And he
them, and
probably
then he
sells them
sells
to the
them.
tourists. Yeah.
Exactly right. We see some of them at the kind of tourist stand during the July 4th montage. I kind of think about Quint that he almost, and I know something about this, unfortunately. There's such a thing as survivor's guilt. Why them? Why not me? And you can really let that eat you up. You know for a fact that Quint has never gone to therapy, has never
Are you
had
sure?
has never had a heart to heart with the little 80-year-old guy that follows behind him
Love that
and been
guy.
like, let me bare my soul. And so he's never acknowledged or worked on it. And I think when we pick him up, before the shark attacks became a thing, before the prospect of getting 10 grand to kill a shark came, he was just this miserable man on Amity who went out every day trying to redress the balance of the ledger and kill enough sharks to balance out with his shipmates. You
Like,
know,
was he counting those jaws and being
I,
like,
I
I'll
think he
stop when
probably
I get to
was.
the number you took from me.
Yeah. And then I'll
Yeah,
keep
that
fucking
occurred to
going.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what else occurred to me? When he was going down into the gullet of the shark,
Yeah. With the
my
machete.
yeah, he even gets a last stab in. My thought for Quint, and this was the first time I certainly never had it because I watched so casually before. My thought was, there you go, Quint. It's
Yep.
okay.
You
There
can
you
rest
go.
now.
This is the absolute best cure for survivor's guilt. It is 100% perfect medicine. you are now no longer a survivor of the shark attacks. You are a victim, and you are
Right.
with them, and sleep easy.
Hmm.
Congratulations. It's a
Yeah.
happy ending for Quint.
It almost
Yeah.
feels like there was a bullet with his name on it. Some doctor saved him and pulled out the bullet. And then
Mm,
later, years later, he was like, I've got to find another bullet. You know, it's
yeah,
like, ah,
yeah, and he stayed out on the water, and
hmm,
he followed sharks around,
yeah.
and basically, I could
He's
see
been
him at
looking.
night, drunk, naked on the bow of the Orca going, "Take
Yeah.
me, take me."
He's been looking for a shark worthy of killing him for his whole life since that
Nice. Yeah.
Indianapolis. And it's something, it almost reminds me of something that I see in like movies about Vikings and barbarians and things where they're just like, I hope that there's someone on this battlefield that can take my head off. I hope
Yeah.
I want to go to Valhalla. I want someone
For the
worthy of
sci-fi
killing me.
guys, it's very Klingon. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Klingons, what,
The warriors.
to die in battle.
That's the
The
highest.
yeah.
Go out on
You
your
go to
shield.
night, go to bed at night dreaming of the man of the warrior who could take you. Like,
Yeah.
how great
That's
that would be.
yeah, that's Quint.
Yeah. That's good. That's Quint, and that's not how great is the Indianapolis monologue. Like, okay, there's a bunch of great, interesting facts about
Oh,
Jaws,
yeah.
but they are so trotted out over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
I knew I could rely on you not to be like, hey, let's talk about how the mechanical shark gave him trouble, and that's why you don't
Yeah.
see it so much. Let's spend an
Yeah.
hour on that. Um,
Yeah, there's enough of
yeah.
that shit. You know, the shark, we could spend the whole podcast just talking about the shark and what it represents. You know, it represents nature, obviously, and that it
Mhm.
can't be tamed and that man shouldn't go certain places. And, you know, but also it's kind of like mortality, it's death. It strikes without warning, it strikes whether you're good or bad. Like that kid, the Kintner kid, he was an innocent and his life was taken young, as happens. Kids get disease, kids are shot, or it's Quint who gets taken and he's been the shark's great enemy. So it's almost like a natural predator for Quint and vice versa. There's a lot that we could just talk about with the shark. And we talked about how rich Brody is. But Dreyfus's character, Hooper, what interests me about him, and you know, you and I have a tendency on this podcast to go woke, as people on the right would say. But like Hooper is your typical elitist rich kid. And back in the 70s, it's so charming that that could mean that he pours all of his money not into a hedge fund, but into
Research.
a boat to do research and to bring him closer to sharks, which he loves. He's invariably clad in dungarees, and he doesn't mind getting fluid all over his jeans to check if, you know, there's a little boy inside of a shark. You know, he's just the right kind of rich kid. And I don't think that exists anymore, Dave.
Yeah, it's he's an archetypical character. He's a standard guy. He's your expert. You always bring
He
it.
is.
It's
But look at Jurassic Park. Usually
mm.
the expert who's scientific, he needs a grant, a research grant. He needs the money men. They're very seldom the same person.
He also stays in his museum or in his lab or in his while the other guys go out and do the work. This guy's on the boat and
Yeah.
loving it. Spielberg's like, okay, I agree that it's good to have an expert character. I agree that that character's job is to tell the audience things about the shark that are useful. But I dislike how poorly these guys are made. I want to make one that's special. I'm going to make a special expert. And he does it in Hooper. He's adorable. He's annoying. He's smart. He's brave.
I think he's also sort of an avatar for Spielberg himself in this film.
Oh, that's really, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, the second you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, he reminds me of Spielberg.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
just a
he's
little
just
Jewish kid with glasses.
who's figured everything out and he's trying to tell people who are older than him how shit should
Yeah,
really work.
you're all gonna die.
You're all
They're all gonna
you're all
die.
gonna die. Yeah. You know, while you were saying that, it occurred to me the quote unquote expert is a refrain in Spielberg films. You know, if you go to another Spielberg Dreyfus film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you have the Francois Truffaut character, who is the expert on stuff. If you go to E.T., you have Peter Coyote, I think, played him. Even in Schindler's List, you have Ben Kingsley, who is the smart accountant, someone who can tell someone else how to do things. And I think it's almost like a character within Spielberg films who leads the audience by the hand and kind of can get exposition out while they're explaining to other characters, they're explaining to the audience. And it's so natural on camera that it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah.
You know?
He masters the exposition expert, which is why the animated video in Jurassic Park is so disappointing.
Using sophisticated equipment.
Yeah.
Dinosaur. Yeah.
Like, hey man, you're fucking great at this. Why are you relying on this trick?
Right.
Maybe I don't listen, I don't even like that movie, so I don't even care.
This is how you know a film is super rich and packed with amazing detail. People will focus on little tiny things in it. There's a girl in this film who has like a blue kerchief in her hair, and she's part of the July 4th montage. Somebody has a theory that that girl is a girl who went missing and turned up murdered somewhere else. So there's that kind of stuff, like real world stuff. But also, there are fringe Jaws theories. Like, you remember the guy who was in the pond when the kids were in the pond with their boat? And he's like, hey guys, you know, tie it off, make it short. You know, that guy who like gets his leg cut off?
Yeah, he's the shoe on the leg.
The shoe on the leg, which
guy.
is a great little, I love the bounce of it. There are people who say that guy in the pond was a pedophile. He's in the pond because that's where the kids go. And so he's just like, hey, you want me to help out? You want me to like there's
you guys have on enough sunblock?
Yeah, exactly. Those creamy hamstrings. Like there's no corner of this film that people haven't scrubbed for fan theories. It's so great.
And there's no corner that people haven't scrubbed for accuracy. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think, came down on the alignment of the stars was wrong. He's like, a Big Dipper? I think not.
Wow.
He was like, your stars are wrong. You have the wrong stars.
I just thought of the shooting stars that happened.
The shooting stars are fantastic. Love them.
Yeah. I'm like, how the hell did that? Because this is a time where I'm like, I don't know that they could add that in post.
Yeah,
like
I think they added it in post. I think
but they
did.
had somehow. It looks, they're amazing though. And it I don't know, you know, if we can ascribe some sort of that's fate, that's a warning shot, that's a foreshadowing of Quint's death. It could be anything, that shooting star.
Yeah. It does seem that it wouldn't be done for no reason at all. Though I would argue that if you spend any time looking at the sky, you know that shooting stars very common. And you know, all you have to do is go outside on a clear night and wait, you know, half an hour max, you're going to see one.
And on the boat in that water, there's nothing but sky around them. They'd see whatever was shooting.
Yeah. Wow, what a beautiful place on that boat.
Yeah.
I mean, that the rocking, sloshing sounds. Let's talk about the sounds.
There's great sounds. Also, everybody talks John Williams with the kind of dun dun dun, but there's some like lovely tranquil stuff he does.
He does it at weird times.
He does it at weird times. Yeah. And also, there's one shot that I just love, and I'll put it up now on YouTube. And it's Quint right up in the bow of the ship. He's leaning on his rifle, and it's slowly rocking, and it's just his silhouette. And behind him, it's almost like the sky from Gone with the Wind. You know, it's this beautiful red sky behind him. Sailor's Delight, whatever.
Sailor Beware,
yeah, it's so
Take care,
good.
beware, something like that.
It's poetic.
But that shot may be. I'm surprised that wasn't a poster. I'm surprised that wasn't available in some way.
It should at least be one on like Redbubble now or something.
Yeah, you know what? I bet it's available on Redbubble. It is an amazing. It's Christ-like. It's incredible. And the rifle does actually turn him into a cross. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that.
I think that's exactly right. I think that was the intention. I also think it would make a good Dave T.
Oh, you might be right there. You might be right. But you're right about those little flourishes, those pretty flourishes when the things aren't feeling so pretty. Really interesting use of music. And
Yeah.
but again, what do you call like just the general sounds, the seagulls, the ship sound, water sound?
Atmosphere,
Yeah,
sound
atmospheric
design.
sound, sound design
Yeah.
is, oh my God. And it also reminds me of that thing where I'm like, I love watching actors act in small spaces. And I think it's one of the biggest problems with blockbusters is that a lot of actors now are acting in sound stages, which are giant. Even if they make it look like a small space after the fact, I feel like you can tell. But those three guys acting in the boat, telling their stories, showing their scars, my God, that feels so real.
Yeah, it does. The claustrophobia, that kind of feeling that Spielberg creates of having them all in the mess together and telling their stories and bonding. And finally, they become a unit. For me, one of the scariest scenes when I was a kid had to do with when the characters go down after the ship has taken on water and they're into their waist in water in the ship. And at one point, when the shark finally comes through the window at Roy Scheider and they're in there together,
I'd
like,
forgotten about that.
oh my God, so great. You talk about
He's in the
close
room with
quarters.
him.
He's
Like
in the
he's
room. Yeah.
literally in the room with him.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm in the room. Shark walks in. Like it's like that. It's
Yeah.
land shark. It's like you don't expect him in the boat. So it's great. My favorite shark appearance though is like they've been, the shark has been like nuanced, or he's been like butting up against the boat, and again, more great sound design. We hear like the wood creaking, and then at one point the shark's just like, fuck it, and he comes up on the back of the
Right.
ship.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah, hey. It is just so fun.
I forgot how enjoyable it is. In between all the tension
Right.
is fun and beauty, and it's weirdly relaxing at times.
It is. And
Yeah.
there's one point where they're chasing the shark after they have like 2 barrels on them or
Oh.
something. And they're just, yeah. And Scheider is like smiling. Scheider is on a boat without a life jacket, hanging on and smiling at great speed as they go for him. They're having fun doing that. They think they're winning. And the music Williams turns on then is all like upbeat and horns and happy. It's a road trip. It's a fun road trip.
It's like someone just said, open her up, see what she can do. And they're like, wow, isn't this terrific?
Yeah.
Out on the sea.
And also, it's a lovely male bonding experience. And it comes on the heels of unbelievably toxic masculinity when they killed the tiger shark. How Miss Kintner's ad attracted all the worst kinds of people. Ben Gardner goes out and he's like, hey, back off. You're going to drown us, you crazy bastards. Like, because he's an islander and he's like, who are all these tourists? But these guys with their dynamite and their whatever, it's such unbridled toxic masculinity. And it results in a death, the tiger shark. And then we see these guys going out for one specific shark. They're bonding, and Brody's getting over his thing, and Quint is getting over his hatred of Dreyfus.
Quint is softening.
Yeah.
Dreyfus is toughening.
Yeah. And it's almost like
everybody's getting better.
And there's a theory even about that it's like a gay subtext that, these guys can finally be themselves and they can open up to that side of themselves, and they get away from the women, like Chief Brody gets away from his wife, and all of a sudden, I don't know.
I have no problem with that theory. I mean, I think it takes it a bit far, but
yeah, I do too.
But it points something out. It points out that that's character development and moving the plot along. The Quint who steps on that boat is never going to say to Hooper, tell me again about this tell me again about this stuff you have. Remind me, what did you say it can do? Because that's huge for
Very
Quint.
big.
To ask Hooper to tell him, he's like, I'm starting to think we might be in above our heads here. Tell me again about this expensive gear you brought. It's a big moment for Quint. He's like, maybe Hooper knows some things I don't know. And Hooper's not a dick about it. It's all done very casually, carefully, quietly.
It's also a passing of the torch. It's a kind of like, all right, we did things my way. I'm totally out of ideas. My thing didn't work. we're in a different place. And it speaks well of Quint that he can pivot and he can be like, all right, you're up.
It speaks well of Quint's evolution. They all evolve. It's funny that his allowing this technology is all lost in a muffled underwater scream and a dropping of all the equipment.
Don't get me started on that fucking shit. Who on earth holds their one weapon, their one chance of killing it outside the cage?
Couldn't pull it in if you wanted to, right?
What an idiot. Yeah, no, that makes me beyond angry. There's one thing, speaking of technology, Quint has such a death wish that at the mere suggestion that Roy Scheider is going to call in for help, he destroys the radio. Quint sees this early on for what it is. It's a last stand. It's him or us. Brody thinks they're just going to try. Brody doesn't see how truly unhinged Quint is, how Quint is going to fulfill his destiny.
Cooper's just studying the behaviors of the Carcarius.
Yeah.
So did you see what he destroyed the radio with? It's a club, which he has 3 or 4 of, that's for beating fish animals over the head when they won't stop flopping around.
Yeah.
Like, rough.
Yeah.
It's points to the brutality of what he's been doing all this time.
And Quint has so much great stuff to him. Just going back to what you were saying about ASMR, the clicking of the reel. When he starts to slowly take line out and he hooks one end of the reel, he hooks the other, puts each foot up, and then it goes out. Oh, that is a masterclass.
He gets the knot. It's a great moment. He gets hey, I got it.
And he times a couple of things great like that with Scheider's character. The chum bucket. I can go slow ahead. Why don't you come down here and chum some of this shit? And even one of the fish heads hits the shark face.
Scheider's lift up into the shot is stunning.
So good. That's like a Werner Herzog trick. That's like a Klaus Kinski pivot.
Yeah, because it almost looked like it almost looked like it defied physics. Like the human body couldn't stand up like that. And he backs up without checking. He doesn't put a hand out or just 6 steps backwards till he's standing with Quint. And then you get the killer line, that I'm not going to say because we're not that podcast. I also wanted to mention that Quint's, not his Indianapolis speech, but his offer speech when he makes his offer.
Right.
He opens with, y'all know me. You know what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But I always want to go, y'all know me. Still the same OG, but I've been low key, hated on.
Oh, that's great.
And I feel like someone should go and do that. Someone should somehow do that. Y'all know me, still the same OG.
Yeah, he's pretty much saying that. Y'all know how I get down.
Right. Yeah.
Like you want to fuck around or you want to pay somebody who's an OG.
Quint is great. Who's that? That's Robert Shaw. Yeah.
Robert Shaw. Yeah, it's great.
He's weird. He's scary. He's likable, weirdly likable. Yeah. I don't know. Was he like, was there anybody else in line?
I don't know about that.
You often know. I don't know.
I do, yeah, but I don't know about that. But I think if he doesn't, in retrospect, as we always say, he is the list. Who do you get? And he's a guy who, he was a heavy drinker. He was a playwright. He's got layers to him.
He had an actual tooth that he could pull out.
Yeah. He was so good. In the 70s, he made some classics. He was so good in The Sting. So, that was a good get. Yeah, he brought a lot of things to it. But when you're watching a good movie, when you're watching a film done well and master storytelling, you forgive the director anything. I don't mind that the head comes up and it's like, oh my God, and then the head just goes back down. I'm pretty sure that's not how sharks work in the wild. I've seen enough Shark Weeks. The shark works because the storytelling works. The old school movie making, they start with the monster. Here, ironically, the film succeeds in spite of the monster. The film succeeds separate from the monster. And that's why you forgive the monster. It's crazy.
I have a dialogue in my head where people are discussing whether or not the movie's going to work. And it's like, so it's a monster movie? Like, yeah, pretty much. What's your monster? It's like a shark. It's like, oh, so it's a lot of sharks. It's like millions of sharks. No, it's just a shark. Oh, okay. Is the shark like bionic or something? Is it possessed? No, it's big. Oh, it's like 100 times the size of an actual shark. No, it's big
10 more
for
feet.
sharks. It's as large as that shark, probably the largest. And people just going, I'm sorry, man, but I don't see why that doesn't seem particularly scary to me.
Yeah.
It's like, couldn't they just get out of the water? No, they're going to have to go in the water. It's like,
Mhm.
it's just genius. I'm just pointing out again how genius it is, because on its face, it looks impossible. Like, and then making yellow barrels scary, making a flashing light scary, making wood that breaks inward in like a shot of a piece of wood breaking inward and some water squirting, terrifying. Like,
Yeah.
because that's the nose of the shark. The dock turning around and coming back.
Oh, I love that. Those two
Yeah,
idiots.
it's like we can't see the shark. I mean, Spielberg tells it like I had a shark, like the shark was in that scene, but I couldn't. It was in disrepair, so we just did the dock thing. I'm like, I don't necessarily believe you. The dock thing is too
It's
perfect.
genius. It works on 2 levels, 3 levels, 5 levels, whatever.
Yeah.
It shows the power of the shark.
Right.
It also gets a little comic relief with those 2 like vaudeville
Absolutely.
characters.
Swim, come on, man.
And most importantly, I think, it grounds the shark and the film in reality, because there would be 2 idiots who go out there with a hook and his wife's holiday roast and throw it out there and try to get that money.
Yeah.
You know, it's a small version of all of the hunters and everyone who came with the ad in Field and Stream.
Yeah.
To
It's like,
kill the
this is what
shark.
happens when Abbott and Costello try.
Exactly.
The 3 other guys who are going to try are more capable, but only by a margin, by a small margin. But
Yeah.
this is what happens when Abbott and Costello try. Also, I've considered the fact that it may be that the shark dragged that bit of deck out and then let go of it, and the tide took it right back in. Like, the shark isn't even necessarily coming back.
Right.
You know,
Well,
I just opened my mind to that possibility. I'm not saying that's the case.
right. Well, just one final great thing about the John Williams thing and Spielberg's use of it. There is no shark theme during the false alarm of the 2 kids using the fake fin.
Oh, nice.
It's a subtle clue to the viewers, and
So
I
he
love
stays
that.
to his own rules. That's
Yep.
nice. That's
Yeah.
really good. I'm
Spielberg
going to have
is
to notice
just-
that next time.
Yeah, Spielberg is just a genius here. Oh,
Yeah.
just one last thing on the toxic male masculinity here. Dreyfuss's character is this little tiny woke motherfucker spouting actual facts,
Mhm.
and he's surrounded by these tough kind of right wingers who are. There's a guy behind him. I don't know if you noticed, Dave. He's blowing in his ear.
Yeah, like taunting him. Yeah.
While the guy in front of him is threatening to shove his head in the shark face. It is crazy. It's all these guys around him with their alternate facts. They're like, no, this is the shark. I'm telling you, so many things in this film are modern, sadly,
Yeah.
and are things
I
we're
told
dealing with.
myself I wasn't going to say it, but like these guys are these guys are perfect representation of right wing. And like I was saying earlier, like, why is the shark dangerous? It's not dangerous unless you're dealing with greed and stupidity.
Mhm.
Ignoring the facts is dangerous. It points that out perfectly.
I just want to give one last thing, just because I'm a super geek. It dawned on me, I mentioned the actor that played Mayor Vaughn, Murray Hamilton, was in The Graduate. It just dawned on me that Richard Dreyfuss is in The Graduate. He has one line. You want I should get the cops or something? He says it to Mr. Roper. Anyway, that just struck me funny, but I wanted to get that in there.
A couple of things I want to make sure that I get in there. I take great offense in the trailer. Like so many trailers, it's so different than the film. And it had this, you're probably familiar with Percy Rodriguez. He's a voiceover guy who did a lot of scary voiceovers for trailers. And he does there is a creature alive today. who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
Oh, that's terrible. Oh, the poor sharks.
It's unbelievably unfair. And
Wow.
oh, relax. It's a movie. Relax. It's sharks. I'm sorry. It does such damage to.
The worst PR ever.
I love shark. In fact, I'm going to ask Hollis to put up my first drawing I ever made of a shark. It's not a child's drawing. It's me 10 or 15 years ago. I think 15 years ago. But that trailer pisses me off every time I hear it. And I also think the last line, it's as if God created the devil and gave him jaws. I'm like, when we picture the devil, we all picture him with a mouth and a mandible and gave him jaws makes absolutely no sense. So it's not even that good. And I have a Jaws based joke that my friends and I wrote on Fire Island.
All right.
And I'd like to tell. It's not long. I'm going to try to tell it right. I'm sure I might get a phone call from one. Well, I hope I get a phone call from one or two of them. That would mean they were watching or listening. So, two great whites are swimming off the coast of Madagascar. And one great white says to the other great white, "Hey, what do you think of Spielberg's portrayal of the great white as a rogue shark who's obsessed with territoriality?" And before the other shark can answer, a barracuda swimming by says, "Hey, did you guys see Spielberg's first movie, Duel with Dennis Weaver?" And the sharks go, "Holy shit, a talking barracuda." Oh,
So
boy,
in
that's
other
a lot of
words,
silence.
the joke is that the sharks
Are surprised that a barracuda can talk.
I'm sorry, it's just that I grew up reading The Far Side, and so animals talking in cartoons is not, I get it. They look down as a barracuda as a lesser being that can't talk. That's the joke?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, it's a much funnier reaction.
Oh, okay, good.
We also love that, not only can this barracuda talk, but he has opinions. He has a backlog. He knows Spielberg movies.
And I mean, Duel is the prototype for Jaws. It's the blueprint of what would become Jaws, really. And even the sounds of both the truck slowly dying and the shark slowly dying are sort of the same. The sound design, it's almost primordial in its weird way. But I just wanted to speak to what you were talking about as far as the tagline and vilifying the shark and villainizing and demonizing sharks, which is what this movie did. I'm reminded of, in the Jacques Cousteau documentary, he talks about
raised on them.
Yeah, me too. I watched his show with my dad. My dad used to love his show where he'd go out on the Calypso and just bring wildlife of the sea right into your living room. There is an episode where he and his crew pretty much just murdered a dozen sharks or something. And it's brutal. And to its credit, the documentary Cousteau, which is on Disney of all places, shows parts of that scene and talks about it and basically apologizes for his ignorance back then as far as what sharks are and how he did a lot of work since then to try and, put sharks in a better light and apologize for his ignorant views. But the damage was done, So sharks have it rough.
Turns out all those documentaries back then, your Mutual of Omaha's and your
I used to love Mutual of Omaha's, Wild Kingdom.
Those guys were all very guilty of just lying.
Also, even if they don't editorialize, you have, a lion chasing down an adorable baby gazelle with its giant teeth and just killing it and thrashing it and choking it and eating it. Who looks like the bad guy there? The food chain assigns villainy just from optics. So it's hard to get past that, even if you don't editorialize.
I'm picturing a lion with the dripping red mouth going, "Oh, and I'm the bad guy."
Oh, It's my listen. All I had today was a baby gazelle.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
my Tony had 4 wildebeests. Talk to him.
Listen, that gazelle had 3 kids, and one of them wasn't too bright. That's
Yeah,
the one I'm eating.
yeah,
I'm why gazelles are so fast and graceful. I'm
yeah.
why. I am the eating machine that drove them to gracefulness.
Uh, um, just in closing, I want to bring up maybe the most stiff on-camera cameo of all time, which is Peter Benchley, the writer of the novel Jaws,
Oh,
who
he's in the
plays
movie?
he plays the TV reporter who is on the beach, and he's like, "People have descended on Amity Island, but there is a
Uh-huh.
shadow, a shadow in the
Yeah,
shape of
he's
a
on the
killer
left of
shark."
the screen, and you can see
Yeah, and then
the
they pan to the helicopter above him. He's got glasses
mhm.
on, but
Yes,
that's
yes,
Peter
yes.
Benchley. Just
Oh, I did not
horrible.
know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love a
And
good
that's something to
cameo.
think about. Like, this book was
Oh,
popular. It was
bestseller.
on it was on the tables in all the beach houses. I literally remember when it was a book and there was no movie. And I remember thinking, I wonder if my parents will let me see Jaws. And I knew that they weren't gonna let me see Jaws. But I remember
Yeah,
you would see that book on the table in beach houses.
right.
Um,
Which is an interesting place to find it. It's like, hey, have fun, go in the water.
yeah.
Here's a few reads. What?
Yeah, I could see someone reaching for it and someone else being like, "Bup, read it on
Yeah,
Sunday."
yeah.
Like, save it till we're done.
There's one character I just want to, since I mentioned her with regard to the ad in the paper, Mrs. Kintner, Lee Fierro. The actress is a little long in the tooth to have such a young son.
Yeah, I'm
And
like, no
then
wonder she's
later,
so upset. What were the chances of being able to give birth to that kid?
yeah, and she's not having another kid. And when she slaps Brody, she clearly has just come from Alex's funeral.
Mhm.
She's all in black. And she's got what I assumed the first 100
Husband?
times I saw this
Lawyer?
movie as her father. I
Oh,
thought,
father. Okay.
supporting her as a single mother. She has her father. But now I'm thinking maybe this old guy was the father. He's
Mhm.
the husband, maybe. Although I would think he would take more of an active role in yelling at the chief, too. But yeah, it's just Mrs. Kintner. So it's clear she's either a widower or a divorcee or something. And it's just there's a story there.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that there are stories there because this is a book.
Hmm.
And we've talked about this, you know? It's like, I'm pretty sure there's a relationship between, Hooper and Brody's wife. Like, I think there's some infidelity, and I don't get that at all from the film, but I've
No,
heard over the years that that's in the
right.
book. I've never read
Yeah,
it, and I have no desire to read it. I
right.
I as hard as it is to make a movie about these shark attacks, I can't imagine
No.
writing a book.
Well, I will tell you it's different. The movie is such a wonderfully distilled version of
Mm,
everything
mm.
that works well in the book, and part of that we have to give because Peter Benchley had a hand in writing the screenplay, but I think a lot of kudos
Gottlieb.
has to be paid to Carl Gottlieb, yeah, who had a
Okay.
comedy background. He wrote for the Smothers Brothers shows. He was in an improv group, so he really brought a lot of the lightheartedness to the film that makes it more palatable.
The reason I was able to say his name just now is because I made a point. I said to myself, like, I gotta see who somebody did a lot of good work on this adaptation.
Absolutely.
And that's why. And I promised myself, like, I'll remember his name.
Yeah.
Gottlieb. Yeah.
Um, Wrapping up, just one of the best films of all time. And I mean, the sequels, I even enjoy the sequels, like 2, 3, and 4, I'll say. I have 3D glasses because Jaws 3D was in 3D. The thing that's crazy about the second Jaws, if you want to see any of the sequels, I would say see Jaws 2, because everything, all the kind of goodwill that you're left with at the end of Jaws is totally eroded in the first 5 minutes of Jaws
Right.
2. Like Mayor Vaughn is back and he does not believe Brody did what he says he and Hooper and Quint did. Like
Hmm.
you start from scratch and it's so it's
And
so funny.
Did Jaws have a baby at the last? I'm sorry, I, I
I
shouldn't do
know.
that. Did the shark? It's not
Hmm.
shark is not named Jaws.
No.
Did the shark have a baby just before it blew up? Is it something
No,
like that?
I believe the theory is that the shark had a love interest who was like, "Hey, where's my man?" And it's like, wait, they did what? Like, it's almost like some street shit. Like, what? Hold on, I'm coming.
I should point out that a shark that big would almost certainly be a female shark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the females that get big.
Right.
Sorry,
Right.
fellas.
Yeah. Well, maybe again, a second
All
gay
right.
theory. Maybe.
Maybe
Who
the third,
knows?
yeah, all right. And also, maybe
Love, love.
the shark that came for revenge in Jaws
Hmm.
2 might have been a 30-footer. Something you see in a lot of movies where two people who were involved in a very dangerous situation and got separated, and then one person comes back, like the way
Yeah.
Hooper surfaces and comes over.
Right.
And the first
Right.
thing they do, or the second thing, they celebrate that they're both alive. But the second thing that person always does is say the person's name, Quint. And
No.
I think he delivers a great no. I'm
Yeah.
so glad he didn't solemnly shake his head. He basically is like, nah, nah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, nah. Was it
I.
interesting? I'll tell you when we get to shore.
Yeah. What I love about that moment too is that Dreyfus surfaces and comes over, and there's almost like something that goes unsaid, which is like Scheider looks at him as just like, "You prick,
You stayed behind a rock.
you were gonna wait until." Yeah, yeah, I survived, but barely.
No thanks to
Like, where the
you.
fuck were you? I could have used you.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
I were Hooper, I'd be like, I was unconscious. Unconscious underwater.
yeah,
Yeah,
really.
really? Were you nervous? I mean, as film goers, we know everything's okay now and they're going to paddle to the shore. But there's 3 tons of mutilated shark in the water.
Biggest chum line ever.
Yeah, and these guys are pretending to be 2 injured seals on their way home.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very hard to relax after it's been drilled into you what gets people attacked by sharks. What are you guys
Meyer.
laughing about?
Yeah, even earlier, Quint says something like, "We got 5 miles of chum line." I'm like, you're going to get a lot of sharks.
Right.
You're not
Right.
just going to get a shark. And there were
Yeah.
no false alarms. There was no like, yeah, that's not him. Let
Yeah.
him go.
Which is what it meant, like, not that one, not that
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
not that
yeah.
one.
And in closing, the greatest movie poster ever, I would say.
You know what? I'm gonna say the greatest movie poster ever. Yeah. I think I even as a young person was like, I think there's some nudity here. I
Yeah,
think that
right.
girl's naked.
Well, that's one of the great things about the advancements in, like, I'm watching the Blu-ray and I'm like, oh my God. Like all of
Yeah.
the shadowing you did back in the day. And we'd see it in movie theaters and it was always grainy prints and
Mm,
whatever. It's pretty
the
much
Blu the
fully nude
Blu-ray is porn.
now.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. The Jaws poster sums up my fear perfectly.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
It
Yeah,
shows
and it's
everything
that
you were talking about
the thin line, yeah, between
and
their
the
world and
head above the
ours.
water.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and exposing all your vulnerable stuff
And
to
the
the water.
proportions.
Yeah. I'm just gonna ask one more question. Was there a short tagline? Was there a,
I think it
Jaws,
was just don't go in the water
watch it before you
or
go in the water, watch it, don't go in the water?
you'll never
You'll
go in the
never
water
go in the
again.
water again.
Hmm.
Well, that was an accurate one. A lot of people
Yeah,
didn't.
definitely hit home for me. All right. Happy July 4th, everyone. Happy July
Happy
4th,
July
Dave.
4th. Remember, go
Um,
out there and spend those summer dollars.
spend your summer dollars on summer girls who are going summer swimming.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.